Hey friends, welcome back. This is Ashley with Uncommon Roots Homestead. Today I am in the garden. It is time to do some thinning of my fall plants that we put into the ground. So we direct sowed into these beds about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago maybe, and I did kale and carrots, and I did some radishes, which are what we're gonna be thinning today. And when I direct sow a lot of these, they were older seeds, so I just kind of like super densely sowed them. And now it's time to thin them. For the longest time in my gardening journey, I did not pay attention to thinning. So everybody knows that you should thin your vegetables, but it kind of feels bad when you do it, because it's like you have all of these nice starts that are growing and they're so healthy, and then to look down and be like, well, I've got to pull one out. Just, it feels counterintuitive is what it feels. So I didn't do it for the longest time. And then last year I was finally like, okay, I am going to thin my carrots and my radishes, and if nothing else, I'm just gonna see what happens and what the difference in my output is. And I realized that by thinning, even if I thinned 50% of what I sowed, I got about 150% more than what I got when I didn't thin. And the reason is, when you have all of these seeds sown tightly together, like carrots or radishes, and they're so close, those root vegetables don't have anywhere to grow. So they're just kind of competing underground for nutrients and space, so you don't get what you're trying to get. So all of that to say, it's worth it, even if it's painful, like a lot of things in life, to thin your vegetables, especially your root vegetables. So today I'm gonna be thinning these radishes. So I wanna show you exactly how I'm doing that. So I'm gonna turn you around so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so as you can see, we've got a ton of these radishes that are all growing kind of super bunched up and close together. So with radishes, you actually can plant 2 to 3 in one hole when you're sowing, and you don't have to thin those. They'll actually grow and they'll kind of like spread to the sides and give each other enough space, but that's not how I planted these, right? I didn't put 2 or 3 in each hole and then space those holes 4 inches apart. Instead, what I did is just like cast a wide net and spread the seeds everywhere. So because of that, I don't want these to be so densely planted. So what I'm gonna do is I'm kind of looking in here and I see, okay, there are just tons right here. So I'm gonna pull these out, and when you pull them out, they look kind of like this. And these, I mean, first of all, you could eat these. These would just be like microgreens. They'll taste like radishes. But what you can also do is you can just plant them back in the ground. So each of these have their own little root system. And what I can do is pull these all out. I'll start a little pile, and then I'll fill in all of the gaps. So I'm gonna get a lot of radishes here, even if I am thinning them out. So I'm just trying to make sure that I only have about 1 radish every 2 inches, and that makes sure that each of those radishes has enough space to develop a nice, beautiful bulb. Radishes are small, they grow fast, so I'm not worried about giving them too much space. And if I have 2 or 3 that look like they're about in the same hole, I'll leave them together and then space about 4 inches after them. So even though it's painful, I know that this is gonna be worth it in the long run, because I'm gonna get that much more fruit. So I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so now you can see they're much better in terms of spacing. They each have about 2 inches, sometimes a little bit less. Radishes are a little bit forgiving, but they were all concentrated right here, and what I did is just kind of spread them out. So I'm gonna get plenty of radishes here, and I wanna show you my carrots. So these carrots have just started germinating, and they're coming up all the way down that line. So with carrots, I usually wait until they're a little bit more established to thin them out, mostly because they're so small and fragile. It's hard to not just like rip them all up by accident. So I let them get a little bit more established, and then I'll go through and thin. And I try to thin about 2 inches between each of the carrots too. And that's what I did this spring when I planted, and those carrots turned out wonderful. They're the biggest carrots I've ever grown. So I will absolutely be doing that again. Now, in terms of the radishes that I just thinned, I have some extras. And again, you could clean these up, eat them in salads. I'm gonna give them to the pigs, but they're edible. They taste just like a radish. It's similar to microgreens. They're a little bit older, so they're technically seedlings, but they're just as edible. So you don't really have to waste anything if you wanted to eat those. And that's another thing that's cool about a lot of these brassicas is that you could grow them inside as microgreens, which is something that I usually do in the winter. And I've got a couple videos on that, so I'll link those below. The only other thing that I have in that bed are the peas, and they're coming up across the trellis. They look really good. I didn't really overplant them. I think I maybe put 2 in each hole. I'm gonna wait probably another week before I decide which one I'm gonna prune and which one I'm gonna let grow, but those look good. And then my kale, I did plant it really thickly, but I wanna harvest that as baby kale. So I'm actually gonna leave it super thick. So the only thinning I have to do in this bed are the radishes and the carrots aren't ready yet. So I'm gonna check that off my list. I really need to get a basket out here and pick a bunch of tomatoes. There's a ton ready, but we're just at that time in the season where I'm kind of done. I mean, I've processed so many tomatoes, of so many jars of sauce and soup and bruschetta and crushed tomatoes. I mean, you name it, we've probably got it canned. And it's like this time in the season where I try to reset and refocus and take it all in, because I know in like 2 months I am going to be dreaming of this. Like, I am going to be anxiously awaiting the garden season again, and here I am in the midst of it, and kind of like, this cool weather is amazing, I want sweaters and coffee. And isn't it funny how the grass is literally always greener on the other side? No matter how old you get, it's hard to get out of that. And so I try my best to enjoy the hard parts of the season, the times where I'm over it and I'm overwhelmed and I'm just tired. I try to push through that, because I know that this is such a blessing, and I'm gonna miss it, and I'm gonna miss that. What's crazy to me is that I literally used to dream about this. I used to dream that I could grab the biggest baskets I own and walk into a beautiful garden and just fill them and have them be overflowing with food and goodness. I used to dream about that. Like, that was something that in my wildest imagination I wanted so desperately. And now I'm here and I have it. And I even used to remember like watching other people talk about it and talk about being overwhelmed or feeling just kind of over it. And I remember thinking like, you don't understand how lucky you are, and you don't understand how much I long for that. And now that I'm here on the other side, I understand. I understand that like with this bountiful blessing comes lots of work and effort. And it's not just, you know, walk out to the garden and harvest a meal. It's usually walk out to the garden and harvest bushels of what will be future meals, and then be good stewards of that, right? Don't let it go to waste. Don't let it rot on your counter. Like, figure out what to do with it. Make something of this harvest. And I think there's so much beauty on both sides, right? I wish that I could go back in time and tell past me to appreciate the calm before the storm, appreciate the ability to bring my coffee out and sit and just watch my one bed that was perfectly manicured, that had no weeds, that, you know, I tended to it day and night. If it needed neem oil, I sprayed neem oil. If it needed diatomaceous earth, I put diatomaceous earth. I did everything for that garden. And I wish I could go back and tell myself to enjoy it just a little bit more, because I spent a lot of time sitting there looking at that little space and wishing for this one. And now there's so much value in this space, and I love it, and it does fill my cup. and it is everything I've ever imagined. And sometimes I just stand here in the midst of it and I am just like overcome with gratitude and joy. But I also long for the days where I could perfectly manicure the space. And I can't do that here. You know, look at my asparagus bed. It's more weeds than it is asparagus. There's beauty on both sides, friends. So if you're on the other side and you're looking at your small garden or your container garden and you're thinking like, ah, I just wish I had that much space. The grass is not always greener on the other side, and there's so much value here, right? I'm not saying that at all. I would never go back, but I do wish I had taken some more time when I was in the other space and just enjoyed it and just been there instead of wishing it away. Because there's a lot of value and beauty and goodness and joy on the other side, but there's also a lot that I can't have anymore. I don't have the ability to come and just sit and enjoy this space knowing there's nothing else that needs to be done. I can come and sit and enjoy this space, and I do. I really try to do that, and I'm being more intentional with my time to make sure I fill my cup and I just spend time being here enjoying the nature and the beauty of it all. But also every time I come here and I just sit or I just take it in or I just enjoy it, there's also 100 other things that I should be doing to make it better. So, no, food for thought. Total side note, there is the largest bee-like creature I've ever seen flying around the garden right now. I was trying to get a video of it, but I can't like get close enough, but he's literally like 3 inches big and has like a pointy long tail. Super creepy. Are you gonna give them to the pigs? Woo!
Pig. I got a pig. They're not so cute.
You gonna give it to Delilah?
Hello. Delilah, get that.
I don't think she saw you.
Delilah. Here you go. Get it. Delilah.
Uh-oh, it went right in her wallow.
Sure. Get it. Delilah. Here. Delilah. Right there. Delilah, back there. Delilah. 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 Delilah.
What do you think? You gardening like Mama? Friends, thank you for joining me today as we thinned out the radishes and harvested some tomatoes. You always have a space here in my garden. Until next time.
Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. Like and subscribe.
He hates that I never say that. Bye.